Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I am Billy Embody. Thanks for joining us. We've got a lot to get to on the podcast today. But first, two big pieces of news. The first one, SMU Basketball did land another transfer commitment in Butler guard Chuck Harris, and our YouTube channel went over 1,000 subscribers. So thank you to all you guys who have subscribed to the channel to make this possible. Really excited about the next step for this channel and continuing to build it up. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and join the over 1,000 people who now subscribe to the channel. Excited about what the future holds. SMU Basketball with Rob Lanier and his staff have been targeting multiple prospects and players out of the transfer portal. And they did hit pay dirt when Butler guard Chuck Harris announced on Wednesday that he committed to the Mustangs for the remainder of his college career. He's got 2 seasons left to play. This is a big pickup for SMU. They came out of the transfer portal firing with former four-star guard Denver Anglin, who played his first season of college basketball at Georgetown. And now they solidify the front court even more with Chuck Harris, who's closing in on the 1,000-point mark in his college career. 59 starts, over 84 games for the Bulldogs. He's played at a high level of college basketball and done well. Last year, averaging 10.4 points per game. And that was not necessarily indicative of, his role in a sense. He was a starter for much of the year, suffered a concussion, and then came off the bench. But Butler also didn't have their leading scorer averaged 12.9 points. So it wasn't like they weren't a balanced team scoring the basketball in that sense. And he's going to bring a lot to the table for SMU. What SMU fans will probably like if you've followed the basketball team is that he shot 83% from the free throw line as a freshman, 74% as a sophomore, and then 85.3% from the line this season. So also somebody who can get to the rack and help the team from the free throw line. This is a big deal for SMU. They were his only official visit. Butler was pushing to get him back. There were multiple other schools involved here. And he's ranked as one of the top available combo guards on 3 that are in the transfer portal. So Rob Lanier and his staff going 2 for 4 for their first 4 official visitors they brought to campus. Obviously, Hyzier Miller announced he was returning to Temple, and then Nelly Jr. Joseph did what many expected him to do, and that was commit to New Mexico, going from Rick Pitino to his son, Richard Pitino. So SMU still needs help in the front court, without a doubt, and that is where this is going to get interesting. So you're going to want to pick up an ontheponyexpress.com subscription, get the latest on who Rob Lanier and his staff are targeting. $10 for 4 months gets you covered pretty much throughout the summer. So a good time to jump on board. A quick reminder that SMU's 2023 football class was pretty much done over the summer months. So if you want all the recap from SMU Football Spring Game on Friday, which we'll talk about in a moment, and also recruit reaction, big boards, all of those things that are going to come as the summer begins to hit us on the football recruiting side of things, especially, be sure to subscribe to ontheponyexpress.com. That deal will not last long. Now, SMU basketball, I mentioned getting help in the front court. They've got to go out and find somebody that can do that. Nelly Jr. Joseph is a guy that they were in on. They were right there in that top 2. He didn't end up visiting San Diego State, but he ends up going to New Mexico. Where do they go from there? That's going to be an interesting piece to all this. They've got a lot of, lines in the water, so to speak, and we'll continue to update you guys on the board as far as who they go after and who they target on that front. So be sure, again, to subscribe. Now, I did want to preview SMU's spring game. We dropped a free article on theponyexpress.com about the major storylines to watch. And that's what we're going to kind of go through on this podcast, kind of an extended look, position by position, of what to expect from SMU. I'll lead off by saying I think this is going to be a little bit more of an extended scrimmage. They're going to do it at Highland Park High School because of the Weber End Zone Complex being under construction at Ford Stadium. It starts at 6:30. Admission is free. concessions are going to be available. They did mention no outside food or drink. So unless you can hide it well in a boot or something, you're going to be purchasing food from some of the vendors there. With SMU's scrimmage, I think you're going to see primarily what'll be more so of a practice vibe. They're going to take the field at 6:30 with the scrimmage getting underway around 6:45. I bet you they do some situational stuff. I think they'll do an extended scrimmage and try to get out of there mainly healthy. That's something SMU was able to do this spring. The only really new injury that they got out of spring ball was Braden Flowers, a true freshman defensive end who's having a nice spring. He was running in the twos and really was showing well for a guy that hadn't played defensive line much coming out of high school, out of the San Antonio area. He played a little bit of offense, a little bit of linebacker, a little bit of defensive line, but not much. So Calvin Thibodeau was pretty excited about him when we spoke with him earlier this week as a part of the last round of interviews with the coaching staff. But that's kind of it. There's a lot of guys that you won't see on Friday. Wide receivers Dylan Goffney, Jake Bailey, running back Tyler Levine, offensive lineman Justin Osborne. You look at the defensive end position with Jaden Jones being out for the spring. And Jahari Rogers, a guy who started a lot of games over the last couple of years for SMU as well. They're going to be careful. And I don't know what to expect as far as snap counts and things like that. But I can tell you, leading off with the quarterback position, Preston Stone's going to get his time. And they continue to develop him and work on all the things that he needs to prepare for his first year as a starting quarterback. Keep an eye on how he pushes the ball down the field, because in the latter half of spring practice, he's been doing that at a much higher clip, a much better completion percentage, more conviction when he throws the ball down the field, which has been encouraging. And the thing about the spring game and honestly practice in general, when you look at Preston, is Rhett Lashley is going to be quick with that whistle. I mean, this is a guy that they are relying on in a big way. And whenever these defensive linemen or blitzing linebackers or safeties get close, they're probably going to be a little quick with the whistle. So Preston Stone not necessarily going to be able to show all he can do as far as extending plays, that inherent playmaking ability that he has, but they're going to have some fun with it, I think. And they have a receiving core around Preston Stone that is littered with competition. Jordan Curley looks like he's going to be a bell cow type receiver for SMU. He added 10 to 15 pounds going into spring practice, and he's had a terrific spring. And he looks like kind of the next in line. And that's the expectation for Jordan Curley, is to take that next step up. And, throughout spring, he's done that. He's done that in his route running. He's done that getting down the field and getting open in that respect. He's had a really nice spring, but there's a ton of competition around him. And you look at the other outside receiver spot, and Keyshawn Smith is a transfer from Miami who is explosive. He has that natural ability to get open and create separation. Wanted to see more consistency out of him this spring. That's what the summer is for, to kind of hone in on some of the skills he has. And the same goes for Romello Brinson, another former Miami transfer who comes into this room being that, honestly, the jump ball threat out of that wide receiver position. He's got the incredible ups. He's kind of deceiving because his legs are fairly skinny. He's just kind of a thin guy overall, but he can go up and get it. He had a couple really nice catches earlier. About a week ago, he probably had his best practice of the spring, going down the field in the intermediate game, all of those things. So I'm looking to see him take another step forward Friday night. And the most consistent guy in spring has probably been Moochie Dixon. He's been able to make some plays. He's sure-handed. He's really developed nicely. And I think they're excited about the way he can push Keyshawn Smith, Jordan Curley, the other outside guys. And he's probably a little bit of a dark horse in a sense to start, opposite of Jordan Curley because of that. Him and Keyshawn Smith have been battling well. He's also saw time behind Jordan Curley. But when you look at consistency, that's the name of the game for Moochie Dixon. Kind of moving into that slot position. They won't have Jake Bailey. They won't have Dylan Goffney. But what they will have is Roger Daniels, who they continue to move around. And he's been able to make a lot of plays because of that. He took some handoffs on Tuesday during practice He's taken screens, he's taken sweeps, he's getting worked in some of the return game situation stuff that they do, and he's just an explosive guy out of the slot. So he's staking a claim to a lot of reps going into fall camp and hopefully during the season, because Jake Bailey is going to be one of SMU's top receivers, but Roderick Daniels is not going away. That versatility and everything he's brought to the table since returning to the team in 2022 has been really something else. And the way he's able to pick up yards in various different ways is critical. And I think he's really carved out a role that'll be even bigger than it was towards the end of last year. And then you've got Jackson Lavender, the true freshman early enrollee who catches everything, has a knack for getting open, and also for picking up yards after the catch. He's one of those guys that looks like he's penned in and makes a couple moves and picks up more yards and can outrun some guys to make a big play. So I think he'll get an extended look as well. You'll have RJ Maryland see some time. Obviously, he's a star, budding star for SMU, and they're going to be careful with him. And a lot of the other tight ends are probably going to get some time and opportunities, but he's obviously somebody that's very much proven and a proven commodity for this offense now after his true freshman season. You look at Nolan Matthews-Harris, who has been healthy all throughout the spring, has done a really nice job. Dylan Dickerson is kind of a dark horse. He's played a little wide out, played a little tight end. He's a big, tall, lanky guy. If he continues to add weight, he might be a, kind of a factor in that pass catching tight end backup role behind RJ Maryland as well. So former walk-on making some noise this spring as well. And then you get to the running back position, which we talked about it last week. Don't want to spend too much time on it, or maybe it was earlier this week. But Jalen Knighton and LJ Johnson and Velton Gardner are going to get the majority of the carries. It seems like Kamar Wheaton might be a little banged up. They're without Tyler Levine, who's recovering from surgery. And then Brandon Epton did have a nice practice on Tuesday. I liked what he did. But those are the three to really watch. Jalen Knighton, his ability to catch the ball and make explosive plays is something that if SMU kind of unleashes him in this public setting, it's going to be fun for fans to see because he's been fun to watch pretty much all of spring. LJ Johnson has come on strong in the back half of spring, and I'm really excited to see what he can do as he gets more comfortable. And finally, on the offensive side of the ball, the offensive line. Hiron White at right tackle, Marcus Bryant at left tackle. Both of those guys have had really strong springs and really have solidified themselves as those starting tackles. I think with this offensive line, it's worth noting Branson Hickman has held down the center position rather well in spring. Ben Sparks and Cam Irvin have played next to him at the guard positions, but there's help on the way. Ja'Kai Clark, Logan Parr, and of course, Justin Osborne, when he's healthy, will be back into the mix in fall camp. Those guys are going to provide competition, as well as three freshmen coming in as well. So this offensive line that has kind of had some issues with this defensive line that SMU has now throughout spring, at least along the interior, I would say, is going to be still a work in progress. So keep that in mind when you're watching them. But I do think Branson Hickman has taken some steps towards, really making a statement to keep that center job. So as fall camp gets here, that position, along with the guard spots, are going to be interesting to see who SMU fits in there. Before we go on to the defensive side of the ball, I got to talk to you guys about our friends at Dank Vodka. Dank Vodka, the first terpene-based vodka. You can get it at Specs. You can get it at Total Wine and on Drizzly. It is terrific. A pre-prohibition style vodka that through their distilling and filtering takes out all the impurities that they have, that traditional vodkas kind of have nowadays, with that burning in your, the back of your throat and kind of that tough taste that they have. You can see the bottle here, really cool design. Our friend Trey Feist has been all over the state sharing his vodka, which now is a premium brand for Total Wine. So if you're looking for a really nice liquor, especially a vodka to sip on, to enjoy, you can have it on the rocks, you can have it with water or soda or whatever. It is terrific, and we enjoy it, and just kind of winding down with it. As you're listening to this podcast, take note And if you want to, I don't think many people can squeeze this in, but if you're in the South Dallas area, Friday night at Total Wine, 534, the Cedar Hill location, 5 to 8 p.m., Trey will be there sharing Dank Vodka. So be sure to check in with him if you can't make the spring game, or get there right at 5, pick some up, maybe, again, fit some in your boot, or a little flask to take into Highlander Stadium, if you would so choose to test that. But you can find him there Friday night, Dallas, Cedar Hill location, Total Wine, 5 to 8 p.m. And then on Saturday, make your way out to Grand Prairie at Lakeside Liquor, 5 to 8 p.m. Get you something for a little Saturday night. It's a terrific vodka, very smooth, clean. And then going into next week, he heads down to Houston on Monday from 2 to 8 at the Baybrook Mall Total Wine location. You can check him out there if you're in the Houston area. And then on April 18th, he's at the Dallas Park Lane Total Wine location. I've frequented that one here and there from 11 to 8 p.m. So 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. Trey will be there at Park Lane Total Wine on April 18th before going over to the Plano Collin Creek Total Wine on April 19th from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then on 420, he's hitting Total Wine at Preston Road in Plano, 11 to 5 p.m., and then making his way to the West Plano Total Wine location from 6 to 8 p.m. So lots of opportunities for you guys to try Dank, meet Trey Feist, a veteran, a bartender by trade, and a Texan who wanted to go out and create the world's first terpene-based vodka, very clean, smooth vodka that you could sip. So appreciate our friends at Dank Vodka for their support of the podcast. Now, we move on to the defensive side of the ball and looking at what the Mustangs will have on this revamped defense in this spring game. And let's start up front, because that's where you're going to notice the big difference. And by big difference, I mean Jordan Miller and Elijah Roberts, 2 Miami transfers who have come in and been difference makers. Jordan Miller has held down that nose position very well, showed some toughness, got a little nicked up on Tuesday and played through it. I just think he's somebody that's going to allow the linebackers to see what's going on a lot clearer, and they'll be able to make their reads and therefore get cleaner looks at tackles. He is that true nose tackle that SMU has been looking for really since Mike Williams left the program. Then you have Elijah Roberts, who Calvin Thibodeau even said he was surprised at what he was able to bring to the table as far as, being able to play on the edge a little bit, and being able to provide a little bit of a pass rush for this SMU defensive line. And that has allowed DeVere Levelston, Elijah Chapman to kind of be moved around a little bit, and rush off the edge. You saw Elijah Roberts getting a pressure there on some of the clips from earlier this spring. But just the size up front is what stands out about this group. And they're veterans. They're able to all provide a bunch of different things for Calvin Thibodeau as far as rotation, as far as being able to make plays behind the line of scrimmage. Elijah Chapman, DeVere Levelston all had some tackles for losses during practice earlier this week. So that's the first look for SMU fans at this revamped defensive line. 2 returners are at the bandit position. You've got Nelson Paul, the veteran, coming off the edge, and you also have Isaiah Smith, who has a ton of talent, pure athleticism, and those 2 guys are going to get a ton of run during this spring game, and they're really, really talented. I think Nelson Paul has been one of the nice surprises of the spring. Not that he hasn't played a ton of football, but he has been that much better, I feel like, this spring, which is huge for this defense. They have to find a way to get a little bit more of a pass rush on the quarterback, especially since you won't see Jalen Samuels out there in the spring game. He's still suspended. Future might very well be in doubt. With that being the case, as we've seen other guys who have been, suspended or away from the team here and there through spring ball, he's not returned. So he's got some things to do to get back with the program. And if that's the case, you're going to need Nelson Paul to be that guy for you. You're going to need Isaiah Smith to give you what he started really as a true freshman, which is some situational pass rush that can get after the quarterback and affect them. And I will say, you've seen them both do it during spring ball at various points. And I think with those guys, if they can get pressure with 4 down, that'll allow Scott Simons a little bit of flexibility with how he calls the defense, not only because you can drop more guys into coverage, but also if the offense doesn't necessarily think you're going to bring pressure, that's when you dial it up. And as we move to the linebackers, I think this is one of the surprising things for me, at least watching in spring ball, is the ability to create pressure with the linebackers. Chris Adamora, converted safety, and we just did a deep dive on theponyexpress.com after talking with everybody. Scott Simons, Maurice Crum, the new linebackers coach, Alex Kilgore, Jaquandis Burns, Ahmad Walker, all of those guys we've talked with during spring. We were finally able to go into this big deep dive story that I've been wanting to do all spring on the linebacker room. Chris Adamora, he's a guy that played at about 215 last year. And he told us after practice, we were walking off, hey, did you add any weight? Nope. He looks, or he is at the same weight, but he just physically looks like he fits in so much better with this linebacker group. His natural athleticism has led to a few sacks this spring that have been, I think, kind of key in just his confidence level. He's playing like he's played linebacker for his whole career. And I think now as we leave spring, you have Ahmad Walker, the Liberty transfer, who looks like a surefire starter. He played for Scott Simons. He knows the defense like the back of his hand. Even Maurice Crum was saying, as I was learning this, I was looking over at Ahmad and he would give me a nod like I'm saying it right or making calls right. And so that's how well he knows it. He's a surefire starter. But Jaquandis Burns is a guy who's entering his second year with the program. He played a decent amount behind the trio of veteran linebackers SMU had last year. I think Chris Adamora is making a claim to plenty of snaps next year in his first year playing linebacker and his final year of college eligibility. So Jaquandis Burns continues to develop, continues to be a guy SMU is high on as far as what he'll bring to the table. But the linebacker room has been a pleasant surprise. And Alex Kilgore looks like everything SMU kind of built him up to be. He was the highest rated signee for SMU on the On3 industry ranking in the 2023 class. His maturity, his willingness to do whatever it takes, and that was something he talked with us about on Tuesday. He's willing to do whatever it takes, whatever role they need him to play, he's down to do. He's going to be somebody that's going to see some snaps this fall without a doubt because of the job he's done in spring. I think playing behind Ahmad Walker is something that he's going to be very comfortable with, getting him in certain situations and just letting him grow. And so the linebacker room, I think, has flashed a little bit more athleticism and promise than even we thought going into spring. So watch that linebacker group. They've got a bright future. Jaquandis Burns is still young. Alex Kilgore is still young. Ahmad Walker has another year after this. So the future at linebacker for SMU before Brandon Maiazono even gets here this summer and potentially another transfer is bright. I think you're going to see a pleasant surprise out of that group on Friday night. When you get into the secondary, this is the position group that you might come away from the spring game saying, well, I'm worried about the wide receiver core. And that's just a testament to how improved this group is from an overall talent perspective. You have Charles Woods, who missed a few practices with a concussion. He's back. He looks ready to go. He's had a really strong spring. It's kind of nice when you watch practice, and Charles Woods made some plays, and I think he had a near interception on Tuesday's practice, but he hasn't exactly been targeted that much. And that is a nice thing for a defensive coordinator to have, is a corner that can take away an option like that. And like he has throughout the spring. You have AJ Davis battling for time behind him, entering his second year in the program. You also have Chris Meganson on the other side, a Liberty transfer, another one who's comfortable in this defense. He's been good as well in the spring. Kavaris Hall has taken a step forward. And then Jalen Davis Robinson, you're going to get a chance to see one of the fastest guys, honestly, in college football. His 100 time during high school was one of the best in the state. He is, right up there as far as Waxahachie goes with all-time 100-meter times, even faster than Aldrick Robinson, for those of you who remember how fast Al was at SMU and in the NFL. He's also factoring into that corner race. So you're going to get a chance to see the present, which is in good hands, and also look at the future with guys like Jalen Davis Robinson and AJ Davis really playing well at that corner spot. And then you get into the safety room. And if you watched SMU last year, they had Nick Roberts, they had Brian Massey, and they had Brandon Crosley. They were all kind of pegged into their holes, and those were the positions that they played. That is no longer the case. Scott Simons, working with Kyle Cooper in that safety room, is now able to move guys around. They brought in Jonathan McGill, who, if you're watching the clips earlier on our YouTube channel, he had an interception. He had a pressure that would have been a sack. That position, playing free safety, is so much more of a, let's just say, a wild card this year. They can move him down and bring him off the edge like they would Brandon Crosley from that nickel position. And they can drop Brandon Crosley back, and he's had a nice spring. Brian Massey had a couple interceptions last week. He's been terrific. I said it throughout the year, and I still maintain that ankle injury that he had in fall camp really hurt him. You can talk about the tackling. That we'll see how it goes this fall. And by the end of the year, it was time to let Ahmad Moses go take a shot at it. And it was well-deserved. And Ahmad Moses made plays. And he's certainly going to factor into that safety rotation. But now that Brian Massey's healthy, he's looked that much better. And that has completely changed things around for this safety room. So those are the guys who I would probably peg as the favorites to start. And then Ahmad Moses just keeps making plays in practice too. So now you have a rotation of 4, and that's before you get to CJ Sanders, the Fresno State transfer, who's backing up Brandon Crosley at that nickel position. He's going to factor in to that rotation and has showed a physicality and an edge that I think SMU needed in the secondary in a big way. And then Isaiah Wacobia, he's healthy. He's making some plays. He had some breakups as of late in practice. This is a just secondary that, again, I think you're going to come away, if you haven't seen SMU in spring practice this year, you're going to come away thinking there's some red flags with SMU's receiver room. And I think there are some things to clean up. There's no doubt about it. And they're going to get Jake Bailey back. They're going to get Dylan Goffney back. But the secondary is doing a terrific job, and they just look more comfortable. They look more aggressive. You can tell the competition is really helping out there. So I like what SMU did in the secondary. That's a position you've got to feel good about. They took a step forward last year overall. They really did, especially statistically. But this year, I think this is where Ricky Hunley, Scott Simons, Kyle Cooper helps this group take that next step up and get them into one of the better pass defenses in the AAC. And that could make a huge difference for this team. If the defense was, a marginal amount better, who knows how SMU would have finished in some of those games. But, the secondary is the most revamped position in this entire team, really. And it's showing. So I think with the spring game, I don't know how much special teams you're going to see. They might do some situational stuff in that regard, but they've been pretty limited overall with what they're doing. They've got Colin Rogers back as kicker. They've got Ryan Bachevsky back as punter. They've been doing some relatively limited special teams work, a lot of install, a lot of fundamentals, blocking, playing the gunner position, catching, punts and kickoff returns, things like that. They haven't done too much team stuff. So I do wonder how much you're going to see of that on Friday night. But overall, it's going to be a nice night. Hopefully the weather hangs on for us and some of those showers get out of the way early on in the day. It's going to be a loaded group of prospects on campus, so be sure to check out ontheponyexpress.com. Again, $10 for 4 months. You can subscribe in just seconds, get you the visitor list, We'll have live updates. We'll carry, of course, the press conferences afterwards with Rhett Lashley and some of the players. So be sure to check all of that out. Keep hitting the subscribe button to our YouTube channel. And before we go, of course, a reminder to check out Dank Vodka. Our friends at Dank, the first terpene-based vodka. They continue to grow and do a terrific job of bringing this premium vodka to you at Total Wine, at Specs. You can order it on Drizzly as well. If you meet Trey Feist at those tastings I mentioned, mention that Billy Embody and ontheponyexpress.com sent you guys. Be sure to check out Dank Vodka, Dank Responsibly. I'm going to enjoy one after the spring game. So be sure to check out Dank Vodka, the first terpene-based vodka out there on the market. So with that, guys, you are all set to check out SMU Spring Game Friday night, 6:30 p.m. at Highlander Stadium at Highland Park High School. Say hello to us. If you see us on the Pony Express, you can I'll be wearing my On the Pony Express hat. So be sure to say hello if you're out there at the spring game. We will have complete coverage of the spring game on theponyexpress.com and be back with the podcast kickoff next week, breaking down all the things we learned from spring practice, including grading out the position groups. So with that, guys, have a great weekend. Enjoy the SMU spring game. And we will catch you guys next time on the Pony Express podcast. Thanks for listening.